All right, thanks, Avery. Recent investigations into alleged fraud involving public funds from Minnesota to several other states have raised questions about how government spending is monitored and enforced.
Joining us in studio is John Hart, CEO of Open the Books, a government transparency and accountability organization, to discuss what these cases may reveal about oversight systems nationwide. Thanks for joining us, John.
Of course, it's a pleasure to be here.
That's fun to have you in studio. John, how is the Minnesota case different, or is it similar to other government spending scandals that we've seen before?
Well, look, I think what's so disturbing about the Minnesota example is you have, fraudsters defrauding families and children. And we've seen so many examples of government fraud and waste. I worked for Senator Coburn for years from Oklahoma. We went after things like the Bridge to Nowhere. We went after Social Security disability. We were actually sending money to people who are role-playing as adult babies, claiming disability funds. So every few years, there's a shocking case of fraud that captures the public's attention. And we saw that 15, 20 years ago. That led to the Tea Party. So I believe we're at the early stages of another kind of really focus around the country to look at fraud. And again, fraud is spending where there's a constituency of really one person who's benefiting, and that's the fraudster. And so every individual taxpayer has the obligation and responsibility to make sure that the money that they spend, it goes to the purposes that we want it to. And that's what our organization is doing, is trying to use transparency to shine a light. Because without visibility, there can be no accountability.
Yeah, well said. And you kind of answered this a little bit. Is this mainly a Minnesota problem, or are we seeing this happening elsewhere?
Well, look, I think we're seeing fraud within this program elsewhere. So, for example, Texas gets the most money from this particular grant fund, the Children Development Fund. And we publish all that data, all those numbers. Now, Texas may have the best example of the money being spent efficiently. But what we're trying to do is crowdsource the oversight. We publish a data set of all of the entities that get daycare funding. So people in Austin, people in Texas can look at our data set and go knock on the doors themselves. And in our country, people are innocent until proven guilty. So I'm not alleging there's widespread fraud in Texas. What I'm saying is, let's look at we're trying to make the data available so you as journalists and citizens can go and find out the answers for yourselves. And in Minnesota, obviously we saw that there was widespread fraud. And there were some unique structural problems in Minnesota. For example, they got rid of their treasurer's office. Okay, so I'm on the board of a group called the State Financial Officers Foundation. They eliminated that office, which was one of the safeguards and checks to make sure that money would be well spent.
So let's talk about solutions. What do you think could help prevent this kind of fraud? We've already talked about having journalists going and investigating. What other things could we do?
Yeah, I think the best thing we could do is upgrade our transparency laws. So when the founders wrote the Constitution, they put transparency into the Constitution before the Bill of Rights. And it requires a regular statement of receipts and accounting. And that transparency principle applies not just to the federal government, but state and local government as well. So when I worked in the Senate, we worked with a young senator from Illinois named Barack Obama on a bill to put all federal spending online. And the ambition for that bill wasn't just to put federal spending online, it was to create a norm in our political culture that, of course, government spending should be public, that, of course, it should be searchable at all levels, state and local. So we need to upgrade that to what we call real-time transparency. So just as we have the ability to go onto our personal checking account, whether it's whatever bank you use, Truist, Chase, and see the money flowing. As taxpayers, we should have that same ability in any entity of government, state, federal, local, to go in and search in real time and understand the flow of money. And because when that is public, when that's transparent, that creates a powerful disincentive for fraudsters, whether they're in Minnesota, whether they're in Texas, whatever state they're in. That we have the technology to do that, and there's no reason to not do that as quickly as possible.
Well said. Well, John Hart, CEO of Open the Books, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And in case you missed the interview, we'll put it up at cbsaustin.com as well as our YouTube page.
And you can also find all of these reports at openthebooks.com. 6:50.